the recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Every so often, we get a wrestling game that breaks from the traditional format, whether it be those that feature wrestling rings in weird locations, or the ones that don't feature a ring at all. 1995's WWF Wrestlemania, the arcade game, was the first of this concept, featuring over-the-top moves, wild animations, and digitized graphics. One of WrestleMania's programmers was Sal DeVita, who previously portrayed Nightwolf, Cyrax, Sector, and Smoke in Mortal Kombat 3. Oh yeah, and this guy in Cruisin' USA. Fast forward to 16 years later, and Sal would be leading a team of ex-Midway employees, many of which created the TNA Impact video game a few years earlier in 2008. This group, now known as THQ San Diego, would bring us the next wild and wacky arcade-style wrestling game, and on March 29, 2011, we would get WWE All Stars. While the SmackDown series evolved from a fast-paced arcade-like experience to the more realistic SmackDown vs. Raw franchise, WWE All Stars would head in the opposite direction, with over-exaggerated character models and move animations, a combo system, and even a full head of flowing blonde hair for Hulk Hogan. The roster is comprised of legends, mostly from the 80s and 90s, as well as current WWE superstars. And the developers even predicted Drew McIntyre's massive size increase. How about that? Each wrestler features an alternate attire, which is such an underrated feature for wrestling games of the time, in my opinion, so I was extremely happy to see that option included here. Hogan is the only character to feature 3 variations, including his Hollywood Hogan persona. Even more superstars would later become available as DLC. Wrestlers like Mark Henry, R-Truth, Chris Jericho, and the Road Warriors, amongst others, could be downloaded at an additional cost. We see 6 total arena options for All Stars, including the current Raw and SmackDown designs, as well as 2 throwback options in SummerSlam 2006 and the SmackDown Fist stage. The 2 remaining stages are original creations for the game, Wrestlemania and the All Stars Arena. Each arena looks fantastic with bright colors and lots of lighting effects, as well as a nice little introduction from the late great Howard Finkel.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wrestlemania! The following contest is scheduled for one fall.
Entrances are present here, however short but sweet. It's probably not a coincidence that TNA Impact featured similar treatment, being from the same developers. We do get proper themes, taunts, and pyro here, and it comes together nicely. And though I would rather have complete entrances, these shorter versions do fit the arcade-like presentation well. We see pre-match taunts, which are kind of a throwback to games like WWF Warzone and Attitude. The control layout isn't far from what we've become accustomed to in a wrestling game. All of the face buttons here are designated for quick and strong strikes and grapples. R2 is used to run, while L1 and R1 are the counter buttons. Taunts can be performed by pressing any of the directional pad commands. The gameplay is wild, but not overly fast to where it's hard to keep up. While grapples are present here and dish out a good amount of damage, there is a heavy emphasis on strikes as well, with a combo system similar to what you'd see in a fighting game. This is where the action really differs from traditional wrestling titles. Each wrestler's moveset features 2 signature moves and a finisher. Signatures can be performed after 1 or more is earned by successfully landing enough attacks on your opponent. This is done by pressing the square and X buttons together and the triangle and circle buttons. Finishers are performed by holding the L1 and R1 buttons together, but can feature a slight delay in the form of a taunt, like Austin flipping the fists before hitting the stunner.
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Finishers are almost always way over the top with added jumps, flips, and impacts that create shockwaves, and these finishers will occasionally result in a KO, leading to an instant loss for the recipient. While the game isn't loaded with the match types and options we're accustomed to seeing, they did present us with a Create a Wrestler mode. It may not be as grand as what SmackDown vs. Raw was offering, but there are a lot of tools here at your disposal to create just about anything you can think up. I think the biggest drawback here would be the lack of customizable movesets, whereas only templates from in-game superstars can be selected. You can, however, choose whatever finisher you'd like, but these are limited to the wrestlers that appear in the game. Basic gameplay modes include your standard one-on-one matches, as well as triple threat, fatal four-way, and handicap matches. We also see options for tornado tag, steel cage, extreme rules, and elimination matches. Extreme Rules matches allow for weapons to be used, which are located both under the ring as well as ringside. You'll see chairs, bats, crutches, ring bells, all kinds of good stuff here, and each impact from one of these weapons just feels so satisfying. Cage matches require the player to climb out of the steel structure to win. Once the top is reached, a minigame is initiated in which a moving cursor must be stopped in a specific section of a meter. If this is accomplished 5 times, the player will exit the cage and be rewarded the match. Diving attacks can also be performed from the top of the cage and make for some pretty entertaining matches. And speaking of diving attacks, I don't know if this is a common problem with the game or just my problem, but every time an opponent successfully lands a diving attack on my player, my controller disconnects. And I do mean every single time. I even installed all the updates and all that good stuff, but nothing seemed to help. And that's not really my only gripe. I'm usually not bothered by long load times, but it seems like even the smallest things here need to load. Even just scrolling through the arena menu can become quite the time-consuming event. And I'm not sure what caching data is, but it happens every time that I boot the game up. Nevertheless, these don't take away from the gameplay, they just create a minor inconvenience. The 2 story-driven modes of play are Path of Champions and Fantasy Warfare. Path of Champions lets the player select a superstar and embark on a gauntlet-style journey following events based around The Undertaker, Randy Orton, and DX. Wait, is that Randy Orton or is that in fact a bald Razor Ramon? You be the judge.
Machismo, man.
This mode features cutscenes as you progress and eventually faces the player against the focus superstar. Fantasy Warfare features dream matches, placing legends versus current-day superstars, with each pair facing off for a specific accolade, such as Randy Savage versus John Morrison for most charismatic, or John Cena versus Hulk Hogan for biggest superstar. This mode features some finely produced video packages and is where the game's complete roster can be unlocked. Visually, this game just looks fun, from the over-exaggerated physics to the cartoonish colors, and the over-the-top facial expressions. It just all comes together perfectly. The sounds are also top-notch here, with great effects, as well as Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler featured on commentary. The game was well received by critics and fans alike, even being nominated for Fighting Game of the Year in 2011, but ultimately losing to Mortal Kombat. But that really speaks volumes for how fun of a game we received with All Stars, and I'm honestly surprised we never saw a sequel, but with the announcement of WWE Battleground recently, it appears we might finally see the game's spiritual successor. If you're like me and you slept on this one for the last 9 years, wait no longer. I truly hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'd like to hear in the comments section what you guys think of the game. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and of course, as always, I thank you for watching.